I'm Sandy Daly, and Helen's sister-in-law, but sister.
I love you.
I love you.
I've been having most difficulty saying my name. It's Roger Daly, and I'm here because I love Helen and John for sure, but I have been so grateful for what this is, which is a celebration, an affirmation of what it means that Jesus lives intimately with us in our relationships with each other. Simple.
Beautiful.
I'm John Daly, Helen's husband, and we just got married for eternity. And someday with all of my close friends, I would love to share that experience with you. So we are definitely going to be together forever.
I love you all. I am so deeply grateful for your presence here today.
I'm Cynthia, Helen's teacher, and now Helen's student.
I'm Stephen, a wisdom brother of Helen and John.
And we are videoing this for an event like this completely scrambles what's present and what's future. So here we are. We're saving this for the future as we enter the eternal present. So what we're doing today, this is a very unusual gathering. It's something that is so rare. And Helen asked me when we were working this out if I could come and do maybe an hour of teaching, and then we could celebrate with anointing and Eucharist after the teaching. That's going to be the drill. I don't consider this is going to be a monologue by any standard. Questions and comments will certainly be invited, and as I said, I now sit at Helen's feet, and we've asked, and Helen has agreed to do a little bit of teaching and sharing with us too. But my own sense of this, and I think I should tell you just a little bit about my own kind of work in this walk, is that, I was just any other teacher of centering prayer and kind of run-of-the-mill, ambitious, contemplative when I met my own spiritual teacher and beloved, Raphael, at the monastery, St. Benedict's Monastery in 1994. He knew right from the start that I would be the last life task he took on. And he agreed to that. And he mentored me, and very, very intensely and with great love and great pain, we worked through stuff in the last 3 months of his life. He told me 2 things. He says, you must find that in you which already lives beyond death and begin to live out of it now. And he told me death will be no interruption to personhood or to our love. And 17 years later, all I can say is he was right. I've continued to walk for 17 years informed by a very, very strong and powerful spiritual seeker who understood that at a certain point in the journey of love and in a journey of consciousness, the walls between the universes get very thin and are crossed easily in love with quiet. And that love continues to grow after physical death. Personhood can certainly be sustained beyond the body, and intimacy is not lost. It simply deepens and grows in a different way. So that's how I speak of what I speak of. That whatever knowing I have is not book knowing, it's seat of the pants knowing. And I put that off without saying that it's, you know, it's written in Truth Anywhere. It's one woman's experience. But it's an experience that's informed everything that's happened in my life for 17 years, so that's a fairly big master switch. So I think that we are in an unusual opportunity here, a very, very rare opportunity, and requiring all the courage and all the trust and all the calm of each one of us. Mostly human beings don't get together in this liminal space. There are private goodbyes with tears and with affection, but to actually sit together as a wisdom group and ponder what's happening, what's at stake, where we're headed. As Helen and I have talked, we've said that I'll reflect on two things. The first one is actually easier, conscious death. The second one is the conscious retransition and what it's like to be in relationship with a beloved, no longer in the body, but fully in the person. And I would say that we will have done good work today if we can at least hold strongly the sense that that's so. And many of you have known Helen longer than I have. Many of you are friends that go back for years and years and years. Helen, we go back, what, maybe 3 or 4 years at this point? I don't know when you first, maybe longer than that, longer than that. Helen came to one of the first things that Helen came to. We had to have her do heavy-duty psychological work because we had a lady there who was freaking out, remember? Christophany, and she was having a manic episode in 2009, and we immediately pressed Helen into duty to get her calm enough so that somebody, Rosie or Jane, could drive her home. So that was the start of quite a journey. But you know, one of the things that is possible within a group of wisdom seekers is the capacity to speak honestly and courageously, to be able to call a spade, and not to pretend that death isn't in the room and we're just having a happy meal. That part of what makes this holy and precious is that death is in the room. And that part of what makes this, both from the one hand, tragic and befuddling and stunning to many of us, is exactly the thing that is the arrow and the trajectory that gives us hope if we know how to hang on to it in a different way. I mean, from the start, this cancer has been quick, brutal, and almost as if it has an intelligence or a mission of its own right. And I know that many of us have had experience with cancer, and there aren't many that cut such a swath. And so you can very easily get stuck in, and a part of us wants to get stuck in, why Helen? Why this? Why just now? Why when we're about to get her out and, you know, teaching wisdom all over the place? And the only way that one can make coherence out of something that this has this configuration on is to simply to say, because the largeness and the luminosity of your soul, Helen, your work, your spirit, will better serve all sentient beings in the dimensions that will shortly become fully your body. That, you know, not long before Rafe's death, he used to say, I can't wait to get out of this body. It's already a hindrance to my personhood. And he would say, as my body becomes feebler, may my spirit become stronger. And the sense is that in the wisdom work we do have this teaching about building second body. and that the fruit of the conscious work is to stabilize something in you that's there all along that you recognize as the real seat of your person. So your person is not the psychological self that goes running around down here on this planet having all sorts of agendas, but is this timeless, immortal diamond, this beautiful ray of God's willingness to incarnate love in form. And if you live consciously, that becomes more and more who you are. And if there was any doubt whatsoever whether you'd attain to that, the doubt disappeared instantly for me when I walked into the bedroom this morning and saw pure radiance, pure love, pure clarity, the ground luminosity itself exuding from your being. Which means, my dear, you've got there. And that there is nothing to fear. Because that body being has recognized itself as itself, still here on this planet, in the witness of your friends. You know, sometimes, as the Buddhists say, you can recognize the ground luminosity at the moment of your passage. I think you've already got it. And so we get in this beautiful grace time to celebrate that beautiful acquisition, that's naming of the pearl of great price as your own soul, as your own being. We get to celebrate that, to honor that with you, and to stand by you as you go through the passage that will separate you from the physical booster rocket, which is no longer necessary to your journey in love. You're in orbit. So we get to do that. We also get to offer ourselves as, in this next immediate phase of the journey, as support, because no one ever quite knows how the physical body chooses to break down. And should there come to a time where your great strong will cannot find itself connected to the body, we hold that. We're here on this end to supply anything that may be cut out of your physical means, to supply it itself. And on the other side, I would like to say that we're here to do the work that this configuration provides. We're in a place of very great sacramental privilege to have one of us be moved into the conscious circle of humanity with such courage, with such clarity, with such luminosity. These sort of things are never a reward for personally doing well. You don't get to join the conscious circle because you've gotten an A in spirituality. You get to do it because cosmic service is necessary and you're the one that can best render it. And in this we are all involved. You and John in a particularly deep way, which we celebrated this morning, a particularly intimate one. We did tie the knot of an eternal wedding. But all of us, as wisdom moves, we're in an era, we're in a cusp in our own planetary existence where the birth of non-dual consciousness is becoming a reality, where a critical mass of human beings are waking up to the fact that if we're going to survive as a planet, we must join hands in love and begin to become one body. In that work, we need our friends on the other side to help, and I have a suspicion that some of that work will be done. So what I want to use this little privileged time of teaching about is to talk a little bit about conscious death, and then a little bit for all of us on how to prepare to receive you, and then a little bit of what I know about the journey, the growth beyond physical life. So, and then we turn the floor over to you. And anytime you or anyone else has questions or comments, please go at it. Anyway, just synchronously, and nothing is synchronous, Helen came to our Holy Week liturgy, our Holy Week retreat at the Episcopal House of Prayer this past April. You were there, weren't you, Paula? Yeah. That's when you became soul sisters. Yeah. And Helen's contribution was particularly luminous and totally useful because we had absolutely nobody there as a music person. And I had bronchitis and was not had very much voice, and Helen's drumming has increased, improved 500%, and Helen was music. Helen held the whole thing. And I'll never forget our Always and Everywhere Rejoice with Helen playing the drums like she was a Sufi master. But during that, we spend a lot of time reading and working from this wonderful book, not easy to get, but The Mystery of Death by Ladislas Boros, who was a little-known Jesuit theologian who actually received this book, almost channeled it, downloaded it in a moment of, laser inspiration. But he suggested 2 points, and the first one is that the moment of death is actually a moment of choice, just like tradition has always said, only it's not God who chooses. That one to heaven, that one, sheep and goats, but we choose. And the choice is really not that different from what the Buddhists call recognizing your true being, the ground luminosity, that essentially in the moment where you perceive that all that was you in your life is dropping away, and this new, this more intense, concentrated but unfamiliar form of divine love is coming toward you. Do you buckle and freeze and say, hell no? Or do you relax and ease into it and say yes and move? And so the first part is what we've been working on in Wisdom School almost from the start. That everything in life is preparation for that ultimate relaxation, surrender, yielding, non-contraction, non-constriction in the face of the new. And I think there's absolutely no doubt that you've got that one down pat. Not worried about that one a bit. That's because all of the life, including the absolute spaciousness and generosity with which you've been able to wrap your heart around these curveballs of the last few weeks, and say, okay, we keep going, is just a beautiful testimony that you're ready for that moment of recognition. The other thing that Boros says that I think is we didn't spend as much time working on at the Holy Week liturgies, but is very, very important in here, particularly for those of us who are what I like to call the predeceased. He says that at that moment, when, if there is a moment, it's sort of more gradient, but when the soul, when the person has left its bodily vehicle, its physical bodily vehicle, you're exposed to, the soul is exposed to what he calls a moment of ontological indigence, a wonderful, difficult thing that says, all of a sudden it means it doesn't have a body to hang out in. And that it's like, I'm naked in the garden. And that at that moment, what happens, and this is really important, is the soul becomes pan-cosmic. That's his words. It says this departure doesn't indicate a separation from the material world, but a closer embrace into the material world. I'm looking to see if I can find the page, but I think I can do it well enough that I don't need to go fumbling for quotes. So that in this moment, the person who is no longer essentially in a localized and particular form has the possibility to take hold of itself through the cosmos. That's an exact quote from, and that you become physically present that way, so that the dropping off of the localized bodily container doesn't mean that Helen is somewhere else. It means the whole earth becomes the radiant field and the agency with which you move. So that was one of his brilliant teachings. And he says, incidentally, for those of you that are working with this in a Christian path, and even for those of you that aren't, because Jesus was never a Christian, but for those of you who are following this as a teacher, that is the real meaning that the theology has never gotten to about why it was that Jesus' crucifixion became the saving action that changed the ground of reality. Because in that moment when he, too, as a human being, went through that dissolution, the ontological indigence, and the becoming pancosmic, it meant that the whole earth became the sacramental body of his love. And it also means, Helen, that he lined that passage with his presence, so that as that moment arrives, turn and greet your Savior.